Welcome to Make More Money. In this show, we're talking with business leaders who have woven or continue to weave character-based capitalism into their corporate culture and their value proposition to create a distinctive competitive advantage. Character-based capitalism is not just about making more money. It's really about building trust between suppliers and customers and doing what's right for all stakeholders, which deepens the relationships that drive business sustainability. Today's topic is sales growth through customer data. And so our guest today is Alan Lee, founder and president of eTech Systems. Alan is an expert in sales and marketing automation who, for the past 25 years, has helped over 1,000 companies use technology more effectively to help business leaders achieve their marketing and sales goals. Alan is a serial entrepreneur who runs 2 other businesses besides eTech. He founded eTech Systems in 1988 to automate Salesforce management, and then in 2011, Fort Knox Data Migration Services to help organizations move to Salesforce.com. A Microsoft certified professional, Alan is a founding member of the Chicago Computer Society as well as 2 other nonprofit educational institutions. Alan, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me here, Ray.
Would you please tell us a bit about your company and your business?
Well, my story starts in 1983 when I took a company public. I was one of the lucky investors in a startup, and we were automating sales forces. So I was an employee, but also an investor, and that company, VMX Inc., went public on NASDAQ, and that was a great experience. But after that, a few years there, I took that payout and started my own company in 1988 and started automating sales teams, because that's what we did. I primarily was involved with at VMX was automating sales teams. And that process took me through 27 years now and counting of working with organizations that need to track who they're talking to about what their salespeople are doing, and how their pipeline looks for the future. So it's really automating the sales team, helping management get information on the salespeople, helping salespeople be more productive.
Well, it really struck me from when we began our relationship, but also the discussions we've had along the way, is that you've been on the ground floor of CRM, and really you're a pioneer in that area. And so when we look at this, you've seen organizations from all different perspectives. So the first question is, let's think about values, okay? And how you have seen values play out in business performance.
Well, I think for the key word I look at, and I see, is integrity. The key word I look at is integrity, but I see so much range of different implementations of what people stand for, what they do, what their core values are. And you can see it when they onboard people, you can see it when they work with vendors, you can see it when they work with customers. What are their core values? How they treat people, how they talk about other people when they're in conversations about planning, how they're going to automate, what they're going to do, what they're going to track. You can really see into what their values are, and you can ask them, what are your core values, and they may or may not tell you. But when you look at what they track and what they want to report on and how they treat customers, employees, vendors, outside people, you can really see into an organization what they're all about. And the big difference I see, that one that comes back to me, is integrity. Do they say what they're going to do? Do they? When they tell you things, when they tell people things, are they giving you the straight scoop? Are they going to do what they say they do? That integrity thing is so important. And I see that organizations that do have high integrity, they tend to last over time. They can attract good people. Other groups that are political and they're hard to read and they're infighting, it's always the short-term thing. They're always just trying to make this big hit and then get out, and there's so much more turmoil and hard for them to make it. What I see in all these organizations is typically that. Well,
it's interesting you mentioned that too, Alan, because so frequently you hear about, well, the sales force are only about the money. When in fact, you and I both know that we're both salesmen, and we're constantly selling. But I think it's not so much as it is selling as it is helping. And that whole mentality of, talk about the short term, that's only about the money. And you're talking about the long term is really about the relationships that they're building.
Oh, it's so important. And the whole buying process has changed so much that the salespeople had to evolve, and the ones that are helpers and the ones that are consultative, the ones that are thinking about how to serve the client, they're the ones that can, I think, do really well long term. It takes a hard worker. It takes someone who's dedicated. It takes someone who will keep on doing things that they know eventually will work. They do things that other people don't want to do. I mean, selling is hard work. You have to, there's a lot of rejection. It takes a lot of ongoing work to get through it. But the people that, when they get up to that interaction, that moment of truth, when they're talking with a buyer, they've got to be thinking about how to help that buyer be successful and not what's going to line their own pocket for a long-term mutual beneficial relationship. But buyers, on the other hand, just let me mention this, the buyers have really changed. And anybody thinking about selling today has to be aware that buyer is going to know about you, they're going to know about your product, they're going to know about your company, they're going to have researched information and probably 60% already made up their mind before you ever get a chance to talk to them because of the internet. It's so different. Salespeople are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're mobile. They're all over the place. Competition is worldwide. You know, the world is flat. The idea that there's stuff coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
So things have changed, and salespeople have to be consultative, and they have to think about that end user and serving them, not just, you know, throwing a number at them and trying to do some fancy split close on, you know, do you want it Tuesday or Wednesday, you know?
Well, let's go back also to the point you made about the organizations where integrity is high and the fact that they really have long-term sustainability. That's also a reflection of the fact that their sales force isn't turning over every week or every month or every year. They really is around that culture that they've built of trust inside, such that the salespeople are being successful, but they also feel comfortable being authentic.
You know, in these organizations, salespeople and internal employees have to be able to fail occasionally, fail fast, and then recover and move on. So they have to be able to do that safely. They have to be able to make changes. The idea of an after-action report, kind of looking at, well, what was good, what was bad, what can we do better, constantly improving. Organizations that have that open environment with their sales team, you know, tend to grow, and very importantly, they tend to adapt. Because what made an organization and a market successful 5, 10 years ago, you know, whatever it was, probably it's different now, or certainly going to be different in the future, right? And the ones that can adapt, they keep their people, and if they don't have high integrity, if they don't take care of their employees, if they don't take care of them, their customers, and honor what would do them, serve them, then they'll lose out, and the good people tend to leave.
Yeah.
We do see a lot more mobility, though. People do tend to job hop around earlier in their career these days, and they don't have as much loyalty as they used to. And if they're not getting what they want, they tend to move down the road. I think that will shortchange some of their experience in career after a while of bouncing around, because they don't develop the roots and the relationships in an organization to weather kind of a storm when bad things happen.
Well, I think that also goes back to the culture. You know, as you mentioned, there are some organizations out here that have a very strong culture that's grounded in core values, and especially the millennials, they see value in that. And part of respect being one of those, you talk about integrity, but respect being another. And looking at different ways and talk about adapting, as you said. So now it's not just a matter of working in an office. Let's face it, sales is out in the public, it's face-to-face, it's leadership, as we've talked before, and influencing others, but in their space, and understanding that customer and what that customer is facing, rather than it's not about me, but it's about you, and how can I help you?
And the leadership, are the managers, are they serving the employees and serving the clients, or is it about them, you know, Mr. Big saying, you know, you'll do what I say, you know, and they're like, I don't know about that.
Well, like you said, you know, and that's another shift that we've seen in sales too, in terms of sales leadership versus sales management. You know, and as you mentioned, you know, sales management was around a territory or whatever, and metrics. And speaking of metrics, okay, you know, how do we measure success? You know.
I think in a lot of organizations I've worked with, I think measuring metrics is one of the key things that companies, and especially startups, you have to have metrics that you can measure the things that need to get done. You've got to have the metrics, and you've got to report on them. You've got to take a look at them. And I think in the organizations I work with, typically we're looking at activity, how many phone calls, how many emails, how many first call meetings. Often sales are good in one area, but you want to get new customers, not just more from the existing. So you want to track separately meetings with new customers, and then report on that. And I think by far one of the biggest shifts I've seen is automatic reporting that just comes out as an email automatically every week, so that people have a dashboard like flying a plane. You've got some needles to look at and the dashboard to see what's going on. That's huge, and those metrics are really important. That you find a few that measure the right things, and then you actually pay attention to them.
So in order to really drive results, we need to be looking at the data. And the data is a lot to be said for that. So what are some of the errors that people have made?
Oh, wow. Well, I think probably learning from mistakes is one of the best things we can do in any professional situations. When I walk into an organization and ask, and look for what areas could be improved, I get called in, the first thing we often see is silos of data. And I'll warn any startup watching the program, you do not want to have the same information in multiple places. Putting things in your email system, your Outlook, your phone, in your database, in your spreadsheets, and having these various lists all over the place. Or having sales or staff that have their own list different than your list. You want to have a consolidated, centralized place where things get updated together, so that then address gets updated, it's there, and you can trust it. So you can classify people, so that you can segment your database for both prospects, customers, referral sources, etc. So that's one of the big things. The second thing is I see a lot is they're not backing it up properly, so sometimes they lose a lot of important data, or they don't take security importance, they don't have passwords, they haven't thought about those things. But the more operational side of it is definitely a lack of reporting. They have data, but they don't report on it. They don't summarize it. They don't really spend any time looking at it.
Alan, and again, you did a great proposal for our company, and it helped Steve and me see the things that we had yet to do, and that's just on the front end. And then, of course, there's the day-to-day management of this. So when I talk about knowledge management components of our business, from your experience, how much energy do leaders really put into that versus how much should they be putting into that?
Well, I see people across a spectrum of what they are doing versus what they should be doing. So you definitely don't want to overdo it where you spend all your time in the computer doing updates of a system that's supposed to be helping you. On the other hand, when you send an email, you should probably have that automatically recorded somehow. Oh, I sent that email. Not having to remember to do it, but just have it automatically happen. So that as you make appointments, you're going to make appointments somewhere, make them in a place where they get recorded so that you can maybe count them, go back and say, well, in the last 6 months, how many new appointments have I had? So I like to always say, just try, maybe when you dial somebody out of your phone, if you make a phone call, maybe record that automatically that you did it, not the voice part. But that, count, how many calls did I make? So wherever possible, we try to automate all that so it happens. And when it's one or two people, it's a lot easier. As soon as you add a third, a fourth, a fifth, you've got a
lot
team.
Of data.
You've got a team, and then then you really need a centralized system to record that. That's where people make the jump.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Alan, you've given us a heck of a lot to think about. And so how can people get a hold of you to find out more about what they need to do in order to automate their sales and their marketing approaches?
Well, you can Google me, look on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest thing. Alan M. Lee, LinkedIn is a good place. eTech Systems is one of my companies, or Fort Knox Data Migration. Those will allow somebody to find me pretty easily on LinkedIn. Okay,
fantastic. Well, Alan, it's been great having you, and thank you so much for being one of our guests and providing your insights to help our audience.
My pleasure, Ray.
Again, look forward to seeing you in the next installment of Make More Money. Thanks very much for your time.